everyone. In today's video, we are going to be talking about automation and how to use Makefiles within our studio to automate our kind of research pipeline. So if you think about it, our research projects can typically be broken down into chunks. So maybe we need to clean the data, we're going to do some summarizing, maybe some visualization, and then eventually go into an analysis and produce maybe a paper or a written report. What we can do is actually automate this process within R using a Makefile. So to truly have reproducible research, we really shouldn't be manually changing anything. And this is going to make it even easier for people to replicate your results. A major advantage of using the Makefile is that if you change one kind of chunk of your analysis, you don't have to rerun the whole code. You just have to run things that are downstream. And the Makefile is quite smart and it knows what to rerun after things were changed because you kind of build this pipeline that has a logical flow of how everything is related to each other. We are going to go through a fairly simple example showing us how to use a Makefile following the Stat 545 chapter that I will link in the description. We'll start with chapter 35 where we're going to initialize and set up that Makefile, and then we're going to go to chapter 36 and follow the demonstration there. Okay, so I've just opened up our studio here and we are just going to initialize a project. It doesn't have to be named anything specific, so I'm just going to go File, New Project. I'll start a new directory. I'll just save it on my desktop. New project. I'll call it Make Demo for now, and just create project. It doesn't matter if you have Git, we're not really doing that here today. What we want to do is kind of make a toy Makefile and make sure that it kind of works as expected. So we are going to create a text file. So File, New File, and at the bottom there's text file, and we are going to enter the following. All, and before we write anything, we are going to check that we have tabs enabled and that they're not just hidden as spaces. So the Makefile is really picky between white space, and it matters if we use tab or a bunch of spaces to indent. So let's make sure. We're going to go to Tools, Project Options, Code Editing, and make sure that this is not selected. So by default, it typically is selected. You are going to make sure it's selected off. My tab width is 4, but it shouldn't matter what it is for you. And you can set the global options so your future projects have this as well by going to Tools, Global Options, Code, and making sure that's not selected there either. Click Apply and click OK. All right, so we've ensured that we don't have spaces for tabs, and now we can begin. We'll write all and then tab at echo build all. And then we'll do another line, clean, at echo, clean all. So this is again just a toy example. We'll get more into the details of what this means in further into the video, but for right now, I'm just making sure that the Makefile is going to work. So let's save this as, just in our project, I'm going to call it Makefile, capital M, okay? Now we are going to configure the build tools. So if we go to build and configure build tools, we are going to build, probably set to none, a Makefile. You can allow it to live just at your project root. That's fine. We're not going to include any additional arguments right now, and click OK. You should notice now that this build tab should appear kind of where the Git tab was if you've looked at my lecture about GitHub. If this doesn't appear, just right click and click reload. It's going to reload RStudio, and hopefully you should see that build tab here. We're going to test to make sure that the Makefile is kind of configured properly. So let's click build all. It says that Makefile 2 is missing a separator, stop, exit with status 2. I'm just going to go back and make sure that these have tabs and not spaces. Sometimes if you copy and paste, that could be the difference. And I click build all and I see that build all appears. We should also be able to do some actions from this build tab up here, or sorry, this option. We can click build all, kind of gives the same thing. Clean all, we'll say clean all will appear in the build tab. So this really just shows that build is installed properly. It's not really doing anything, but it is accessible within RStudio. If you prefer to run things from your terminal or your shell, we can do so. Just click on that terminal tab. We can say make clean, which runs clean all, and we can also do make clean all, which does clean and build together. So this is just testing. Again, it's not doing anything, but we're just testing to make sure that it works here. So if you have everything set up to this point, we're good to go with the demo, which I will continue in next part of this video. Okay, so for this demo, we are basically going to create an automated process to read in some data from a dictionary that contains a bunch of words. We are going to create a histogram of different word lengths, determine the most common word, create a nice plot, and contain all this in a report that we're going to generate with RMarkdown and eventually export to HTML. So a pipeline might look something like this. So this is what we call a dependency graph. So we are going to use a function to get these words, save them as a TSV, generate a histogram and save it as a PNG, create a report, use that histogram in the report, and render it together into an HTML document. The nice thing is we can do all of this with Make. If you still have that project open, we can just work from the same thing. If you want to create a new project, then you can feel free to do so and just follow the previous steps as well. The first thing that we're going to do is get our Makefile to actually pull this dictionary of words for us. So what we are going to do is use this one line R script, which I'm going to copy and paste from the demo that I've linked below. I can just delete all of this for now and make sure that this is a tab and not a space, because sometimes it doesn't copy and paste tabs correctly. But basically what we're going to do is say, well, let's have words.txt, and it's going to be an R script where we're going to download a file from this destination, read it in that way. From here, we are going to actually use the all and clean targets again. So we're going to say all words.txt and then clean. Well, if we call the clean command, then we are going to say, let's remove with force words.txt. So if you were to run that clean function and you had that word.txt file in your R project, it should clean it and in a more automated way than just simply deleting it. Now we want to actually create a table of word lengths. So we are going to use a different R script. So here we kind of wrote R code within this call, but to make a plot or a table, it's a little bit more involved. So we're going to put it in its own R script. So we are going to include now histogram.tsv. So it's going to be a table. And this is going to depend on a R script that we're going to write called histogram.r and words.txt. So these are kind of dependencies for this histogram.tsv. So if either I changed the code for the histogram or if I changed word.txt, I added more words, then I'd have to regenerate this table because they changed and they're not up to date. So this is again kind of telling the Makefile where everything is related and what has to be run downstream if something were to change. Tab, we are going to say that this is going to be an R script. And this $sign symbol indicates that the input variable is the first dependency. So this is going to depend on histogram.r. A little bit weird, but you'll see where everything comes together in a few minutes. So let's create that histogram.r file. So maybe we'll make a new R file. And you could do this many ways to create a histogram that just kind of generates this table. But here's one way. So we're going to take the words.txt that will eventually be generated, get the length, create a histogram, or I guess a histogram of the length, and then write the table and call it histogram.tsv. So that's one solution. And let's name this, save as histogram.r. That should show up here. Now that we've generated this histogram, we can actually replace words.txt with histogram, oops, I keep spelling that wrong, histogram.tsv, as this is our more recent output. Then when we clean, maybe we want to remove that as well. So we are going to include this in the clean call here. So at this point, we can actually check that our functions, this Makefile, is working as intended. So if we are to run make all in our terminal, we should see that words.txt is generated, and we should also see that that histogram.r is going to be generated as well, or histogram.tsv, sorry. So if we look at words.txt, oh, it's a bit too large, but we can look at the histogram.tsv. We get the length of words and their frequencies. And if we are to run make clean, it should remove those from our directory as intended. So now that we have our table of the frequencies of our words and the word length, maybe we want to create a plot. So what we can do is actually use ggplot2's qplot function. It's only 3 lines long, so we're not going to put it in its own R script. I'm just going to copy and paste the code. Make sure that everything is tabbed. It is not. Okay, so the input is histogram.tsv, and from there we are going to generate histogram.png. And this is going to be a ggplot, qplot, using length frequency, first argument, input argument here. So it's going to read.delim histogram.tsv, and then it's going to save the file as the output, histogram.png. Let's save this file and run this and see what happens. So maybe I want to change also histogram.png is the latest output. Let's try make all. I have words.txt. And if I do, sometimes you have to refresh it, it's a bit slow. I have words.txt, histogram.tsv, and I also have the PNG. A couple of other things were created as well, including this rplot, but we could always clean that up later if we wanted. So again, I'm going to update my clean. Maybe I want to clean up the PNG, histogram.png, the rplots.pdf. And if I run make clean, everything should go away. So as I showed you before, when we run make all, we get that weird rplots that shows up, and we don't actually want it. We just want this histogram PNG right here. So we can just include in this code to just remove it. So the next line of code I'm going to use here is just rm remove rplots.pdf. So we don't want it, let's just remove it. So let's try running make all again after saving. Oops, can clean all, make clean first. And now I can make all. And I shouldn't see that rplots. Great, I have my PNG, but I don't have that weird rplots.pdf anymore. Now that we have our plot, we can actually render the report. So we are going to add here report.html. And this is going to use maybe an RMarkdown file that we'll call report.rmd. It'll take in the histogram that we created, or that table, and the actual plot, histogram.png. Again, not a lot of code here, so we are just going to copy and paste it, say it's an R script, where we're going to render the RMarkdown document using rmarkdown.rmd. So let's make rmarkdown.rmd, file, new file, rmarkdown right here. I want my output to be HTML, and it's just going to have code that is going to use that histogram.png, the table that we created, and some code that's going to find the most common length. So whichever one has the highest frequency, we will output it. Let's name this, save this, sorry, as report.rmd here. Save it. And now my most recent output is going to be report.html, which we will generate from this .rmd file. Might have to be capital R here, actually. Try this out. And then let's just clean everything up. Make sure everything is saved. And we should now just be able to run make all, and it's going to generate this report.html. Let's try it. It's going to read in the text files, generate the table, generate the plot, and hopefully generate the report. Okay, so now let's look at our output. It's going to look something like this. Of course, it's not a very beautiful report. You can make this plot smaller. You could, in the RMarkdown file, something like that. But you can tell I really didn't do any manual work to create this report. So you can play around with this. There's more sophisticated things you can do with the Makefile, but this is a relatively simple example of how you can automate your workflow using Make in RStudio. Highly suggest checking out the textbook for some more in-depth explanations and extensions to this Makefile activity. I know it can be a little bit weird and finicky, but once you make your first Makefile, things just kind of fall into place and it becomes a lot more clear. So I hope that you find some value in this, and I'll see you at the next video.